the global assault of high oil, salt, and sugar. Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast, brought to you by Vitacois Ltd. Today, we're tackling a critical health topic, the dangers of excessive oil, salt, and sugar consumption. While this might sound like a familiar warning, recent scientific research has revealed a startling truth. The damage these substances inflict on our bodies happens much faster and more comprehensively than we ever imagined. The body's protective barriers, strong vs weak. Every part of our body is protected by layers of defense. Think of these barriers as city walls, shielding our vital organs from external harmful substances. However, the thickness and strength of these walls vary significantly across different organs. For instance, the brain is protected by the blood-brain barrier BBB. This barrier is incredibly delicate. Think of it as a thin screen door. In contrast, organs like the liver, kidneys, and hearts have much sturdier defenses, more like thick brick walls. If you look at anatomical maps, it becomes clear some organs have membranes only a few layers thick, while others are reinforced with many dense layers. A simultaneous invasion, breaking through one by one. When we consistently overconsume oil, salt, and sugar, these substances act like corrosive agents, launching a coordinated attack on these protective barriers. This process has two distinct characteristics. It occurs systemically. Oil, salt, and sugar travel through the bloodstream to every corner of the body. They don't attack organs one at a time, they launch an all-out siege on every barrier simultaneously. Different breach times, because the barriers vary in thickness. They fail at different rates. Just like a fortification with uneven walls, the thinnest sections crumble first, while the thicker ones hold out longer. The scientific timeline of damage. What does the specific timeline look like? Let's look at what authoritative scientific research reveals. Hours to days, the blood-brain barrier BBB falls first. Research shows that just 1 hour after consuming high-fat, high-sugar foods, the permeability of the blood-brain barrier begins to increase. This means toxins that should be filtered out start leaking into the brain. Days 1-2, BBB permeability increases significantly. Day 3, cognitive impairment begins, thinking becomes foggy. Day 5, emotional issues emerge, such as depressive-like behaviors. Day 7, neural synapses, the connections between brain cells begin to change. 4 weeks, the powerhouses of brain cells, mitochondria, begin to malfunction, and astrocytes, critical support cells, become overactive. Signaling clears brain damage. The transition from initial leakage to functional impairment in the brain happens with frightening speed. Weeks to months. The gut barrier and other organs. The gut barrier is also relatively fragile. Studies indicate that a high-sugar diet can lead to the degradation of the intestinal lining within a few months. This allows bacterial toxins to leak into the bloodstream, triggering systemic inflammation that accelerates damage to other organs. Months. Liver, kidneys, strain, and heart show. While the liver, kidneys, and hearts are more fortified, they cannot withstand a prolonged siege. The liver, high-sugar diets can lead to fatty liver disease within 8 to 24 weeks. Even moderate sugar intake over a few weeks increases fatty acid synthesis. A long-term study on primates showed that 7 years of a high-fructose diet led to massive fat accumulation and fibrosis, the scarring and hardening of tissue, a precursor to cirrhosis. The kidneys, after 16 weeks of a high-fat diet, markers of inflammation and enzymes responsible for fat synthesis rise significantly in the renal cortex. The kidneys began to struggle under the weight of inflammation. The heart, high sugar levels induce oxidative stress and inflammation, promoting cardiac fibrosis. This makes the heart stiff and less elastic, eventually leading to heart failure. The science of erosion, how it happens. How exactly do these substances damage us? It's not just simple wear and tear, it's a complex biochemical chain reaction. Inflammation, excess oil, salt, and sugar act like a match, lighting small fires of inflammation throughout the body. Oxidative stress, metabolism of these substances produces free radicals, which acts like microscopic bombs damaging cell structures. Lipid metabolic disorders, excess fats and sugars disrupt normal metabolism, causing fat to build up where it doesn't belong, like in the liver and artery walls. Mitochondrial dysfunction, when the cell's energy factories are damaged, the organs lose the power they need to function. These mechanisms feed into one another, creating a vicious cycle where inflammation causes more damage, and damage triggers more inflammation. Long-term consequences. If these habits persist for years, the consequences become severe. Brain. Chronic BBB damage leads to cognitive decline, memory loss, and a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. Liver. A clear path from fatty liver to fibrosis, cirrhosis, and potentially liver cancer. Kidneys. Chronic kidney disease develops silently, often reaching advanced stages before symptoms appear. Heart. Cardiac fibrosis leads to heart failure, drastically reducing quality of life through extreme fatigue and shortness of breath. Most importantly, much of this damage is irreversible. Once tissue has turned to fibers or hardened scarring, it is incredibly difficult to restore it to its original state, even with a corrected diet. Summary to recap: excessive oil, salt, and sugar attack your body's defenses simultaneously. Your brain's barrier is the most vulnerable, failing in days, your gut follows in weeks, and your liver, kidneys, and hearts, while tougher, will eventually succumb after months or years of persistent assault. Prevention is always more effective than a cure. Reducing these substances isn't just about aesthetics, it's about defending the barriers that keep you alive. See you next time.